House Majority Leader Steve Scalise officially unveiled H.R. 1 yesterday. That means that is the priority bill for the Republicans. That's H.R. 1, the Lower Energy Costs Act. Republicans are hoping that this legislation will unleash American energy. Joining me right now is Louisiana Congressman. He is the House Majority Leader himself. Steve Scalise is here. Congressman, great to have you.
Maria, always great to be with you.
Thanks very much for being here and being in studio. And boy, oh boy, what a day it is. I want to get your take on what's going on Wall Street here with a massive market sell-off. But first, let's talk about H.R. 1. You could name the bills whatever you want or put them in whatever order, but you made this the one. So that H.R. 1, meaning that would be your priority bill. Tell me why this was made the most important.
Yeah, Maria, you know, when Speaker McCarthy and I were talking about what the top bill would be, and, you know, we ran on a commitment to America. We laid out to the country we wanted to get our economy back on track, address inflation, which clearly is one of the big driving factors behind what you saw at Silicon Valley Bank, along with mismanagement. But we also said energy security is really at the heart of that. We've been talking about getting our country back on track from an energy security standpoint. And so H.R. 1, the Lower Energy Costs Act, is really focused on helping America be energy independent again, lowering costs for families by making our own energy. We shouldn't be dependent on foreign countries. You've talked about this a lot. You know what the problems are. Let's streamline the permitting process. Let's build more energy infrastructure like pipelines, which Biden, of course, day one killed Keystone, blocked a lot of other projects on pipelines. Let's have lease sales where you have certainty, where you know you can invest in the United States instead of foreign countries.
Yeah, I know, but you need a partner in the White House to do this, right? I mean, the president keeps blaming the oil companies, saying that they have all this opportunity to drill and they're not doing it. I spoke with Mike Wirth, the CEO of Chevron, says I don't know what he's talking about because the big issues are around the permitting. So are you going to get this president to actually agree to this permitting that you're looking for?
Well, look, we've seen this with other examples. We just sent a bill to his desk last week dealing with crime in D.C., where initially President Biden came out against it. Crime's out of control in D.C. We said, why should you be letting people who are hardened criminals walk scot-free? And we sent the bill to his desk, and after we sent it, he was initially against it. Now he said he'll sign the bill. I think when the country sees how smart energy policy can lower costs for them, not just at the pump, where the prices are 40% higher since Biden took office, but household electricity costs are double digits higher. It's one of the reasons you're paying more at the grocery store. So I think if the public gets engaged in this issue like they are on crime, I think we have a chance of getting this done. But it starts with passing it in the House and having a full debate. In 2 weeks, this bill is going to be on the House floor. You've got the Energy and Commerce Committee, Natural Resources and Transportation Committee all involved in putting this package together. And it's going to show the country how we can be energy independent, even though a lot of Biden administration officials, like his own energy secretary, have no idea how to do this. We're going to show the country how it can be done better than anywhere else in the world, and then let the country get involved.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about the energy secretary, because Jennifer Granholm the other day said that we should be learning from China. I mean, is China not the biggest polluter out there? What are we going to learn from China?
Well, what they need to learn is about energy policy and about sanity. I mean, is anybody competent in the Biden administration, I think, is a question we should be asking. But Kathy McMorris Rodgers and Jeff Duncan and Bill Johnson, all on the Energy and Commerce Committee, just Monday sent a letter to the Energy Secretary Granholm saying, you've got to come before our committee in Energy and Commerce and explain yourself. What do you mean we should learn from China? China, frankly, should be following our role as every other country should. We're the cleanest country in the world to make things. And by Biden shutting down America, he's sending more jobs to China. By the way, they're building a coal plant every week and increasing emissions. We were reducing carbon emissions in America while being energy independent.
Should we read into this most recent approval, or we're expecting an approval of the Willow project in Alaska as a pivot that this president is making?
I haven't seen a pivot. You know, they may have scaled it down some, but at the end of the day, you're not seeing consistency in permitting or in leasing. And so what that means is a lot of investments going overseas for long-term projects. And Biden, even at his State of the Union, indicated maybe just 10 more years we're going to need oil. Nobody believes that, by the way. We're going to need all sources of energy. Let's advance wind and solar. They're surely not ready for prime time today. They're going to continue to develop, but we're going to need oil, natural gas. We're going to need nuclear nuclear power. Why is Biden shutting all of that down?
Yeah, well, I think it's a good point, because we're watching a situation where it's an all-of-government approach to sort of try to get even lenders to not bank the oil companies. I want to move on to the lenders right now, because we are looking at a broad market sell-off this morning. As you know, the Dow Jones Industrial Average just a minute ago down 600 points. It's now down 539 and down 160 on the NASDAQ. The Department of Justice is now preparing an investigation into the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank. Congressman, how bad are things going to get? And there is an expectation that the GOP wants to potentially defend all deposits at all banks. Is that even possible?
No, I haven't seen that. But what I have seen, there are a lot of very valid questions being raised about the management at Silicon Valley Bank, but also the supervision. You know, because a regulator's only as good as their ability to actually do their job. And did the regulators end up getting asleep at the wheel? I know you had Brian Style on earlier talking about that. When you look at some of the fundamentals, the way that they were making investments at Silicon Valley Bank versus the type of people that were putting their money in uninsured deposits over there didn't really match up. And frankly, you don't see that undiversification, lack of diversification at a lot of other banks. I've talked to a lot of the small and medium-sized banks in Southeast Louisiana. They don't have those same kind of problems that a few of these banks that are in trouble have. So it's not a system-wide problem, but frankly, it's the checks coming due from 2 years of President Biden's reckless spending that drove inflation, that drove interest rates. A lot of people said the Fed was late in the game, and then when they got in the game, they started raising rates too much too fast, as opposed to catching it early off, because they just kept spending trillions and trillions of dollars doing things like paying people not to work. It made no sense. It's one of the reasons why they lost the majority in the House. It's why we need to restore fiscal sanity in Washington.
Well, it's a good point, because when you're in a situation where people think we're already vulnerable, one issue, one item can act as that, straw that breaks the camel's back. And we're seeing this now equity market sell-off as a result of worries around banks. So where are you in terms of changing policy in that regard? The spending has been huge on the Democrat side. We know that Speaker McCarthy is trying to get meetings with the president to try to come up with some kind of promise that you're going to see a boundary in place in terms of spending. And we could have a debt ceiling showdown in the coming months, where markets are nervous about the potential of the debt ceiling not going up. Yep. Are you going to raise the debt ceiling?
Yeah, and Maria, look, common sense has to be re-injected back into Washington. I think that's the one thing that was missing the most in the last 2 years. And so the debt ceiling negotiation really is where this comes to a head, because we said we've got to get control over spending. The real problem is when you talk trillions and trillions of dollars, people lose sight of these huge numbers. How about this for real numbers? For every dollar that Washington takes in, Washington is spending $1.29. That can't sustain itself. Wouldn't work for a business, surely wouldn't work for a family. Can't work for Washington either. And so in these negotiations with the debt ceiling, and Speaker McCarthy laid it out early, when the president said he just wants a blank check, he maxed out the nation's credit card by racking up spending for 2 years. We're not going to give him another credit card and say, go max this one out too. We've got to have a conversation about how to get control over spending so you can bring that $1.29 back down closer to $1 out for $1 coming in. Yeah. That's going to be part of these negotiations.
Well, people understand that, but we're in a situation now where we've got fears of contagion.
Yeah.
If you dither on the debt ceiling debate, doesn't that worsen things?
Yeah, and
raise the debt ceiling.
The good news is we've laid out real clearly to the president that as we talk about raising the debt ceiling, it's got to be in conjunction with getting control over spending.
Okay.
And the president doesn't want to put anything on the table. We've looked at a number of things like just welfare reform, stop paying people not to work. That's hundreds of billions of dollars.
Yeah, which is why I've got a narrative and a feeling that commercial real estate is also under severe pressure. Congressman, it's great to see you. Thanks very much.
Great being with you.